Hello Internet. Today I'm going to be making some drill jigs. I thought I'd take the time to do a little video essay, video document, because it's not very often that I do them. And I'll get, straight into it, I guess. So this is a net. I've had to send this away. I couldn't laser cut it in the house. I think in Australia it's about 40 bucks for materials and labor, plus courier delivery, plus GST. So it might have come to about 55 bucks. And in that you can probably get a few jigs done, depends on the thickness. I've used 3mm acrylic here just to sort of save resources. A thicker one would be nice. It sort of feels heavy, but man, I've drawn thousands of boxes and like one jig will just keep going and going and going. I'm using these brass inserts. It's got those holes there. So the idea will be, if you cut this out of acrylic and you drilled into it, pretty quickly the drill bit will start scraping at the edges. It's going to get sloppy. You're not going to get very many drills. You know, I wouldn't use it more than a few times, sort of, if you're trying to do something accurately. So you put the brass insert in and that will just keep going forever. Like I said, these are 3mm acrylic. One consideration is these brass inserts are more than 3mm. So say you had side mount jacks, right, on each side, and you had the brass insert sticking out a bit, then when you put the enclosure sideways to go drill it, you're going to have this little brass insert. So if you got them on the sides, I'd use an acrylic that's greater than 3mm. I'd go to 6mm or something like that. And then when you go do the sides, they'll recess in a little bit and they won't push out. But this won't be a problem because I've only got it on the, let's call it the front, I don't know. And that's the top or the other top. So it's going to like sit upright on that. That's going to be the bum of it. And yeah, I'm talking too much. Let's get into it. I'm going to stick these in. So these just came from the laser today. I did notice it's pretty good. There's a tiny bit of slack in there. By the time it's all assembled into a net, I'm not going to worry about it. It's all going to come together and lock in. But on that note, a couple of things I do want to note. That little bit of slack, that's sort of a good sign that he's done a nice clean cut of the edge. This is actually pretty sharp. Like he's done a really quick, nice cut. I could cut my finger on that. That's how sharp it is. But if there's any burrs or something, or if the laser hasn't quite and need another pass, or it wasn't powerful enough, you'll definitely have to go through with a file or something, get right into the corners, because all those little burrs, if you miss just one, it pushes everything out of whack, and the more accurate you can get everything, the better. So I'm not worried about that tiny bit of slack. But in my file previously, usually these little brass inserts would be pretty snug in there. But so it's sort of like it would hold itself in. I'd have to like tap it in, hammer it into place, and that would like really be pushing out on the acrylic. But this hasn't been the case. It's a little bit still accurate. Like it's not gonna have any drift one way or the other. But it definitely will have to get glued in. So these are these inserts I'm talking about. It's just an M3 spacer. Oh, 6mm, there you go. So if you get a 6mm, I'd probably get something a bit bigger for the acrylic, 6.5 or whatever you can get. Well, I'll get into it. This is a glue I'm using. It's actually an acrylic cement. It's better than glue. The acrylic sort of liquefies and it bonds together, and you really feel like you have one piece of acrylic again. Short of that, you can use cyanoacrylates, just regular super glue. It's not as good, but it'll work, sure. I wouldn't get a low viscosity one. I'd use a high viscosity super glue because it can get down the cracks and might go onto the base. If you're doing the enclosure, go on the enclosure. Just seems to make a mess, goes down the walls, which pushes it out. And again, the more accurate we can get this, the more fun we're going to have playing around, and the more dense and complicated circuit boards we can use. So this is going to be a 1590 BS, which is a 1590B with a little extra depth. Otherwise, it's all identical, same bottom plate. And I've got a Hammond 1590 N1, which is the equivalent of a 125B or a 125B, whatever you might call it. So yeah, I don't need all of these, but what I would recommend, if you're getting something lasered, standardize everything, chuck in some extra holes for future projects, whatever you think you might need, and then you won't have to keep making new jigs. These spaces though, I'm going to put them in preferably before I assemble everything because it's all on a flat base now. Otherwise I'm going to have to assemble it, maybe put the enclosure in there, hammer it onto the enclosure, and then we're relying on the flat surface of the enclosure to get the heights right. I'm going to glue these, I have to walk away, let it set, and I'll come back, reassemble it, we'll start again. I'll do my best just to make sure they're all going straight up and down. It's better that he's cut the acrylic with a little bit of extra gap than the other way around, because then it would have pushed out on all the edges here and there. Because these all, if you did have a little bit of burrs that didn't get cut out, that would be pushing out and you'd have these spaces not matching, but this is going to work great. Oops, so that's already dripping on my board. This is a brand new tube, I haven't used it yet. But, oh, okay, that's starting to run. This is surely going to make a mess. I don't care. It's a bit of acrylic. It's going to have some acrylic mess on it. And I don't really have to be stingy with the amount because I've got tons. And it's going to dry up before I use it again. That's not too much, but like I said, it's not going to be pretty. I'll try not to go over the top though. I'm trying to keep my head out of the shot, so I'm not really leaning forwards too much. Now I'm hoping this isn't going to leak through to the bottom of the acrylic. I don't think it will. I'm just flooding this. But yeah, I don't mind if I'm flooding it and I'm building up a well, because if I build this jig well, it can literally last a decade, do thousands of boxes. So put in the effort. It's not hard. I freak out with these things, you know, one little mistake and you got the mistake for years, but every time you do one, just fix up the mistakes and refine it, make it a bit better. And so I'm just coming at one side and I'll come around the other side later. And unlike super glue, this cement will just make a blob of acrylic pretty much. So think of this like liquid acrylic. I'm pretty happy with the way they're sitting too. I would have rather they were tight, but as long as they're accurate, that's the main thing I'm needing today, is accuracy. It did feel like some sort of wobble a bit, but I guess we'll see. Cool. Alright, we're gonna leave this dry. I'm not sure how long. Doesn't take very long. Fixture time 10 minutes, 80% strength in 24 hours, so I'm gonna come back maybe in an hour or something when I feel it's not gonna gunk onto anything, because I'm going to assemble it on top of the enclosure and I don't want to gunk up the enclosures. I can always restore the enclosure, but if it is making contact to the enclosure, then it's going to make an uneven surface, and the cleaner I can get it all, the better. Okay, we're back. So I've gone away, the glue, cement, acrylic stuff has dried up. While I was gone, I did put a second little blob around because I did want it to be tight and not fall out somewhere down the track. When I picked it up, I did notice one of these was just protruding out a very tiny bit, so I sort of pushed it up against the board, pushed it flat here and there, just to make sure they're all level. And they're looking pretty cool. So I'm going to assemble these nets. I've got some rubber bands, just try and keep a few around. 1590 and one. Make sure you're using an unpainted, unless you're going to always be drilling painted enclosures, but the difference of being powder coated or painted will actually push it out a significant amount. I hope this all matches up. I haven't actually checked this yet. I just got stuck into it. So far, so good. Of course, if it's thicker acrylic, this will be a lot easier for you. Yeah, that's tight. So those jigs were all just measured with some calipers. I just tried to get like the widest point at the lowest bit of the enclosure because it's on a slope, obviously. And if you get it exactly what the caliper says, put that in the software, make it 1-to-1 scale, it should come out tight. Like even if it was a little bit out, that's okay, or push out, it'll just mean that the registration of the drill holes might be a tiny bit one way or the other. So I'm trying to probably get 2 rubber bands, and this might explode and fall apart. It might take a few shots and whatever. Of course, because someone's watching, it just makes it awkward. That's holding together pretty well. I'm going to move these. I'm just moving the rubber band so it's not sitting in those little joining spots, because that's where we're going to glue. I don't want to glue the actual rubber band because it's going to become a part of the drill jig then. And get rid of all the twists, not that it matters. Okay, that's cool now. I'll probably try and do one top and bottom, so just like that. And then same thing. If you don't have any rubber bands, what I used to do is just get some other bits of metal and like push it up against the side of the box. That works fine, but this works better. These are sort of touch dry now, so I'm not too worried. Oh no, the lid's coming off. All good. So it might be a bit fiddly and frustrating if it falls apart, or just, you know, start again, take a breath. All right, that's good enough. So at this point, give it a check. That should be, you know, everything should be flush, straightening up. No wiggle room. Like the rubber bands will keep it all firmly against the metal. Like that is nice and tight. Again, I'm just checking the rubber bands. So what I'm going to do, and again I'm triple checking it's really centered as well as it can and there's no gaps and whatever I've done, because this is it. What I'm going to do is just flood those little junctions there where the acrylics are joining, but I'm not going to do so much that it's going to fall over the edge and hit the rubber band, because then it's going to get amalgamated into a big blob. So this is just going to be a light one, and then when that dries up, it will come back in maybe an hour or something like that again, when it's sort of touch dry and pretty firm. Tilt it sideways, do the edges. You can always come back and put on a little bit more later when it's one solid unit, but right now I'm just trying to get the structure of it. If we get this top layer, it's going to hold all the sides in pretty much in the right spot. It's not going to get bumped 0.5 millimeter, and then you're going to get a really accurate drill jig that you can make thousands of petals with. Okay. I'm not going to be stingy, but like I said, don't overflow it down the edge. And this will give it a skeleton to work with. I think this little tube was about 14 Australian dollars. I mean, it was 14 Australian dollars. Okay, I probably should have put that there No, I'm not going to move it. I don't want to nudge it. It's going to live there now. This can only be assembled one way. I've made it in such a way that you couldn't put a piece in backwards. I've only got one rubber band. That should be right. I'm trying to get it in the middle. All right, that's pretty cool. Crap. Stop. I think this is my first time building a 1590 BS enclosure. The last one I did on paper, and I'm pretty happy with how tight that is. Again, if you use calipers, don't go by what the manufacturer says. Yeah, the manufacturer says it's so many millimeters, so many inches, and usually that's not really actually that accurate. It's like a rough guide. It might be a millimeter out, it might be half a millimeter. So make your own measurements. Don't trust the data sheet. Or whatever. That's just my finding. Alright, we're back. We're nearly there. All the work's nearly done. I think it's dry. I mean, it's touch dry. I'm just going gently. Let's take a look at it. There's no gaps. There's no slack. I'm just going to tilt them sideways. Probably don't need that there anymore, actually. And the rubber band's going to keep everything pulling in still, because any instance where it gets some room to wiggle outwards, it'll take it, and then it's not so accurate. See, this is clogging up pretty quick. Note on this, I really love the smell of this stuff. What I do is I glue it, I walk into another room, the fumes aren't that toxic then. But if you're in a small apartment or something, maybe don't just sit there over the top of these fumes, eh? And I'm going to flood this in a little bit. The top layer is the main layer to get right. Just a bit over those little seams there. I am missing the spots where the rubber band is, but I can always get them later. Now the top layer is dry too, we could probably get to these side layers a bit quicker because it's the top layer is holding it together. So I might just give it, 15 minutes or something, to maybe a little bit longer than that, but not like a full hour, because then for each side we're going to be here for hours, rotating, flipping. Okay, waiting game again. All right, we're back. You can probably guess what we're going to do here. Flip it over, keep gluing. Come back again, 15 minutes. At this point I get pretty impatient. It's pretty much glued together, so I can take these rubber bands off. With the sides done, I'm only sort of leaving it there for 5 minutes to be touch dry. Wait. Okay, this is it now. We're pretty much done. Now I did the bottom panel last, and I'm just going to squish it sort of flat against the board. I have made a bit of an oozy mess, but that's okay because it's all sort of flattened out anyway. This one's pretty clean. The reason I'm just squishing this is because I want it to be nice and flat, even surface on the bottom, because when I come to drill the top jacks and DC socket, yeah, if it's not even, it's not going to be straight, obviously, but that's just one final note. And these are pretty good. They're still drying. I literally just did that a few minutes ago, so happy to touch dry. There's no, you can't hear it like making any wobble noise, so it's super tight, there's no slack, and that's good. One last thing to mention, for these M3 spacers, I find a 3.3mm drill bit does a really nice job. It's nice and snug. That's a little bit larger than a 1/8 inch if you're using the old King's measurement system thing. But yeah, 3.3. Thanks for watching, guys. I know it took a long time. Thanks for bearing with me. And I really suggest that if you don't like drilling, this will just save your life pretty much. Thanks. Have a good one.